Okay, so last week we got over almost everything. We missed just one thing, so I will talk about that. One thing I wanted to mention is, so now 3 classes worth of videos are online, and they have the markers below. They're on our website that will tell you where certain things are located within each video, so you don't have to watch the entire thing to locate the thing you're interested in. So that we have online and ready for you. Is there any questions about what we've covered over the last 3 classes before we get started with this one? Okay, so now we're ready to get started. So I'm going to...
Jackie, Jerry brought a question up to me, and as long as you asked if anybody had a question, I think, Jerry, you weren't at the first one, at the first meeting.
Okay.
And he needs a better definition of a catalog and a folder. In other words, he just shot a bunch of criteria images, bringing them in and creating a catalog. And I said, you don't necessarily want to create a catalog, you want to create a folder within a catalog.
Correct.
So maybe could you just...
So when Lightroom first started, the catalog would only hold, maybe 40,000 pictures, but now they'll hold a lot of pictures, like over 100,000. I'm over 100,000 images, and it's still going strong without any problem. So a catalog, you really only want to work with one if at all possible. What happens when you're using a catalog and you want to get into a different catalog, you have to totally get out of the one you're in. They don't flip back and forth like folders do, where you can go from one to the other very easily. So it's more of a process to go from one catalog to another. And I have done that before because of different situations. But it's not something that I have even done more than a couple times. So I can't remember exactly what the process is to get out of the one catalog and into the other. And some people will run like maybe a travel catalog separate from maybe a business maybe a personal catalog different from their business catalog. But generally speaking, I think what you want to do is just make folders and just separate it that way. So you would we will actually talk about the whole catalog here a little bit later, but not in the terms that you were thinking of, but you'll at least see where it lies on the interface. But I think folders would be the best shot. So you can make one that's, say, if it's for the criterion, maybe you just have a criterion and you have 2019, 2018, whatever, and have them just filed in those folders, just for the ease of use. Yeah, Scott? You could use a collection too. So what was your thought on separate? You must have wanted it separate from other things.
I didn't know the vocabulary. Gosh, I hate to say all this out loud. I was going to ask you to pause that. I think I didn't know the vocabulary, and all I wanted to do was to, I think all my pictures that I've imported into Lightroom are kind of all in one big wad.
Okay.
I took 1,000 pictures or something at the criterion, and I was just wanting to have those separate and import them into Lightroom. So I thought what I wanted to make was a new catalog. I guess what I really wanted to make was a new folder. I
Yes.
didn't know how to do either one.
Okay. Have you watched class 1?
I did once quite some time ago.
Okay, so I think that would answer your question. But what you would do is on the import menu. Mm-hmm. So you've got so do you already have them on your computer or on an external hard drive or something?
On my computer.
They're on your computer. So what you would do is you need to just let Lightroom know they're there. So on the one and only catalog, say, that you will be using, you would go into the import screen. Can you flip me over to Lightroom, please? Okay, so we're in Lightroom now. And if I had some pictures that I wanted to import like you do, I would go up to File. See up at the upper left-hand corner?
Yes.
And if I click on that, coming down, well, yes. is import photos and videos. So if I click on that, it will open in a new screen. And so on this left side, you would go in to your, do you use a PC or a Mac? So you would go in and you would locate it, whether it's in your C drive or whatever drive you have. You would come down and find the where you've stored them on your computer's hard drive, right? So you're going to locate it and you're going to highlight the folder that they're in on your hard drive. And then you're going to hit add. So right now it says copy, but if I come over here, oh, I don't have something to import. So I can't flip over there.
Okay, I understand. Add would be available then.
Yeah, so add would be right here on the right. So if you click it, then it'll say add. And then over here, you won't have as many options on this right-hand side, but you will be able to, I think in add, I don't know if you can rename. You can select how that, can you rename and add? Okay, so you can come and fill in these blanks the way you want them. So you can decide how your file's going to be handled, what kind of preview you want, whether you want a smart preview or not. You can title them so you can rename them all if you want to. You can go ahead and apply during import, which is what we talked about last week, which is you could add your basic preset like right here. So I could click on that. You could have your copyright. And then down here, I would go down to the destination location. Oh, you're right. And add, so that's the one that's not there. Not seeing it, it's just like throwing me for a loop. So this section, destination, won't be there. As long as you want to leave it located where you have it now, you won't need the destination. It'll just stay where it's stored right now. It will just tell Lightroom where it is. If you chose to move it, say you wanted to move it to a different location at the same time, that's when it would be like last week when we talked about move, that other, which is up there in this. So if you went to add though, it won't have a destination. You won't have to worry about that section. And then you would just hit import and it'll bring in all those files and you'd be seeing those files in the center panel. Yes. Once you select them over here, you'll see all of them. And then you'll hit import and it'll place them in the folder that they are in right now.
Okay.
So, and it'll just show them from that point on.
Okay. If you were going to say you had it all in your computer on your C drive and you wanted to move it to an external hard drive, like a D drive, H drive, or whatever, is that where you go up to the upper top right?
That's where you would go into that middle section and you would instead, so you say you had it on your C drive and you wanted to put it on an external, you would use the move, which is the one we talked about last week. So you'd use move and then you will have a destination down here. And so then you can place it exactly where you want it on the new drive. Make sure the drive is connected. Otherwise, you won't see that as an option to hook it to.
That upper right up there where it says Windows C drive.
Yes.
You don't change that up there?
It'll change when you see it down here.
Okay.
So it's set up now. It hasn't, we haven't clicked through it because I don't have any images on there, but that will change according to what you place down here in this destination folder. And there is like a double arrow right there. It's on the crack, so it's hard to see. And there may be the same options up there, but I go down here where it's easy to read. I'm not sure if that's what's up in that or not, but I've never actually clicked on that to see. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
okay? And the difference between a collection and a catalog, I think that was what you said. Great difference. The catalog, again, is like kind of keeping all of your information. You can almost look at it as though it were a JCPenney catalog or whatever, and we had sections in it, but we don't tear it apart kind of thing. But anyway, so a catalog's going to have every image in it somewhere. It's just not, you're not going to see all the individual files till you go down to folder. A collection you can use as though it were a folder, or you can selectively choose images out of a folder and make a collection. We will get into collections here as our third topic of the night, so we won't deal a whole lot with that until we get to it, but they are different. Collections are very useful for certain things that are outside of just Lightroom, this interface, this Lightroom Classic.
But they're only available in the catalog.
I'm sorry?
They're only available in the catalog. You can't use them in other programs.
The collections?
Yeah.
You can use them in Lightroom or
Just
Lightroom
in
Mobile
Lightroom.
and Spark and.
Yeah, but not like in Photoshop.
Correct. Your collections do not work with Photoshop. Those you have to come out of folders for. So yeah, but there are other uses for collections, and I'll try to go over those here shortly. So I'm going to cancel out of this screen, and we'll go back to the PowerPoint, if you wouldn't mind, please. So let's real quickly talk about what happens when you go to shut down Lightroom. And so you're done with Lightroom for the day or the editing session that you're having, and you go to Command Q out of it, Command or Control Q, and you get this little window will pop up, which is an awesome window. We never used to have that. This is relatively new. And it says, do you really want to quit Lightroom? And it's like, if you do, say yes. It used to be sometimes you'd accidentally get into, say you're going to quit, and then you thought, oh, I didn't want to quit really because I forgot to do something, and you were stuck. You had to get out of it. So now you have the opportunity at this point to cancel out of quitting, or you can go ahead and quit. If you click yes, you want to continue to quit, then this other window will pop up, this one that says Backup Catalog. And I circled this line. I want you to notice. It says, note, this only backs up your catalog file. It does not back up your photos. So what does that mean? That means it's only backing up the information from the editing part of it. So you need to have some sort of backup system separate from this to keep a backup for your photos, because if your hard drive on your computer or your hard drive on your external hard drive would quit working or whatever it might be, this backup system is not going to help you. What this remembers is your edits. So if you have your photos themselves backed up on a drive somewhere, whether it's Backblaze or you're doing some other kind of time machine kind of thing, that's what you need to do to back up your photos. This is only backing up edits, but if you don't back it up and something would go wrong with your hard drive or your Lightroom, you might have lost all your edits for whatever amount of time that you hadn't backed it up. So what you can do then is the first line gives you the option of when you back up. So you can choose, these are your choices, just this time, once a month, once a week, once a day, every time you shut down. So you can choose that, and then you can choose where you place these backups by hitting choose, and then you go into the file system and you tell them where you want it to back it up. Now, my suggestion would be that you vary the location each time you do a backup, because if you continue to back up, say on your computer, and every single backup is on your computer, and so is your Lightroom, and your computer, something would happen to it, and it doesn't work anymore for whatever reason, you don't have your backups or your Lightroom, so you are just back to zero. You may not have it. So saving it to, if you're going to save it to your computer one time, and then the next time save it to an external hard drive, and on the third time you might save it to another drive. So that way, if you need to go back, and something fails with any one of those, you have some other option. So that would be my suggestion.
One other suggestion is the fact that I've got mine set up, because Jackie's absolutely right, what could have happened there. I have mine set up when I back up my images. I also, in the backup, I have the backups backed up.
Okay, so yeah, and
every time I go back up, I'm backing up the backup.
And I think that's, to keep, and you don't have to keep those backups forever.
Right.
So, if you've had some that are 2 or 3 years old, you could delete those after, even several months. It just depends how confident you are that you didn't lose something between a year ago and today. So you only have to keep a few of them at a time, but I would suggest you do that. And then once you've got these set, you're ready to hit backup and you just let it run. And I leave those two checked. Those were up by default and I don't mess with them. I just leave them as is. So I would encourage you to back up and back up again. Yes.
Yeah, if you take a picture out of Lightroom over to Photoshop, do some edits, and it comes back over to Lightroom, those edits that you did in Photoshop, are they going over with that?
Well, you saved it. So
They're in the.
I would say they're in the exif data or the XMP file.
No, they just come over, when you come back out of Photoshop, you have to save it as, say, a PSD or a TIFF or whatever. All your edits get put into that file then, and then that's it, it's gone.
Okay, so it's written right in the file.
Does
It
that have
comes
to be
back
save
over.
as or just save?
Either one.
If you do a save as, you may have to import those. Sometimes they come in some situations they don't. So that I'll go ahead and talk about now so I don't have to do it later and remember that I did, but I plan on talking about that later. If you were in Photoshop and you do the edits and you have to do a save as for some reason, and there are occasionally that it happens. Sometimes it'll bring it in Lightroom will find it right away, and I'm not sure why. And then sometimes it doesn't. So if it's not, when you go back into Lightroom and you're not seeing your save as image coming in and sitting next to the originals, then you would need to go into the import menu, find the file folder where you put them when you did your save as, and just do an add. And it will bring it into the correct location. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else on that? So on backups? All right, so the thing that we didn't cover last week was, if you flip me over to Lightroom, that'd be great.
Can I ask one other quick thing?
Sure.
You're talking about doing backups. In Lightroom, I know that when you close it out, it's just gonna back up your edits. If you wanna do a full backup to maybe you got 2 external hard drives and you're putting one on there and then you wanna do it again, have a second backup, how do you,
At the same time? I mean, same exact backup? You mean
Yeah.
like through there? And you wanted to put it in 2 different places
Yeah.
at the same time? I would say the only way I would know would be to open it back up and then close it back down and choose the second location on the second time. I don't know of any other way that I don't know that there's a second do it 2 times, but do you guys know?
You have to do it separately.
So yeah, so you would go and close it down, let it copy back up to that first location, then open it back up, close it right back down, and when that screen pops up, just pick your second location and copy to that. All right, so last week we didn't get to talk about, we're in the develop module now, so I'm going to hit D, so if you want to go there. There we go. Okay, so I want to look at the left-hand panel, so I'm going to go ahead and open that. Can you guys see the left panel with that shade up? Or do you need it darker? You see it? All right, so last time we were looking at this, we talked about the navigator and we talked about presets. So today we're going to talk about the next 3. And I'm going to start with history. And I need to select an image real quick first. So we'll just pick this one. And okay, so we've got this picture and we want to see the history. And if I click this arrow to the left of the word history, it'll show everything that has been done to this picture since it was imported just a few minutes ago. So right now there's nothing in there, but if I come over and I start messing with any of this stuff, you will see a variety of things starting to populate on the history panel. So I'm just going to kind of mess with this so I can get some different things up there. So we'll just draw down. And I want all this, I want you just to notice that it shows everything. You can see everything as I click on it. It starts to come into this history panel. So what you can do is you can say, you know, I want to go back in time or something, and you're welcome to do that in this history panel because it is showing you everything it does. I do feel that it's not as easy to find my way through that because you'll see if you move it the same slider several different times, it's like, well, which time was it that I want to go back to? I don't think this one's as easy to use as the one in Photoshop, but it is recording everything that we've done. Now, that said, I want to talk to you about what is a snapshot, and that's sort of a version of a history in a way. So I'm going to reset this image real quick. And we'll say we took a snapshot of the original. So this is where we started. I wouldn't really have to do this, but we'll go ahead and just take our original. And to take a snapshot, it's like a snapshot in time. So it's recording everything that has been done to this image at some point in time when you hit this button. So I'm going to click this little plus sign. It's going to open a screen, and it tends to do things by time and date. So if that is good for you, you could use that. Or maybe you can type in a name there that would make more sense to you. So we'll say original. I'll type that in, and I'm going to hit create. And you'll see that it pops in over here. It's a snapshot. So let's go through and do some editing. And so I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to just do a quick once over edit. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to remember this because I like it. Do I like it as well as I might like something in the future? I don't know, but I want to record it as it is right now so that I can easily get back to this point if I want to. So again, I would come up to the plus, open it, and now you can title it whatever it means to you. So this was really just an auto tone. So I could type in, oops, auto tone. I can't spell, I can't type. We'll blame it on my bad wrist. It's the keyboard, that's it. And then we'll say, okay, what if we wanted to try, I'd like to see what it looks like if I desaturated it. So let's just bring the saturation down. And maybe I want to come in and I want to try doing something else. So I'll just add a vignette to it. So I brought in a radial filter. I want it to work on the outside. I'm just going to simply bring my exposure down. I'm going to make it sort of severe so you can see it. And so, okay, I might like this one. So I'm going to make another snapshot. And I could title it Desaturated or just option 2 or whatever you want. So I will just go with option, I can't spell that either, 2, and we'll go ahead and create it. And so now you'll see I've got 3 different things up here. And we'll say, okay, I'm still not sure what I want, so I'm going to close this. Maybe I want it to be black and white. And if I want it to be black and white, we'll just adjust the dehaze a little, make contrast a little bit more. Maybe I will brighten it just a little bit. And so now I'm going to record this as another snapshot. And you just can keep going. So maybe that's black and white. And so now you'd say, well, I kind of want to see what it looked like when I did that desaturated. Which one did I like better? And you can just simply click on it. And we've gotten to that. Or maybe you go back to the original. There it is. There's the autotone. And you can click around. And at any point in time, you could say, well, maybe I want to print all of this. Well, I'm going to print this one. You could export right now from it as is. After you've exported this one as a black and white, you could say, now I want to export a JPEG. I can't function here. As this desaturated option. And so I can go and I can export another JPEG off of the same file. I didn't make a virtual copy, so I can't see them all 3 or 4 at the same time. I could have, if I made virtual copies of each one of them, I could have compared them, but I can still make it several different options by using these snapshots and be able to click back and forth from where I may have had a lot more complex editing between each one of these snapshots, but you can get back to where you were. And that's the nice feature about a snapshot. Now, if for some reason you said, oh, I don't want this one anymore, you can get rid of it. So we'll just click on original, say we want to get rid of that. We just hit the minus thing, and it'll just get rid of a snapshot if you choose to not have one cluttering up your snapshot section. Is that understandable to you guys? Do you have any questions about that before we move on? Yes.
If you totally didn't like anything you've done, and you want to get back to the original, you can go down there and hit the reset.
Correct.
Okay, and the other question is, because you started off in history, as the history's piling up, and say that you don't like the direction you're going, you want to go back some steps. If you click on one of those lines and go back to that step, does that, and say that then you start going off in another direction, does that, the stuff above it go off automatically? Or?
Yeah, so here's our history panel on here, and here's where it was at import, and here's where it currently is. So if you ever do Photoshop, you'll notice that they're in the opposite order. Like the most current thing is at the bottom there, but on this one, the most current thing is at top. So if, say, you went back to black and white at this point, and then you started editing from this point, so we'll say we said we'd turn it back to color now. You can see it got rid of all of the stuff that was above the black and white. Now, if I go back into Snapshot, I can get back to, I guess I didn't do anything after black and white. I could have gotten back to it that way. So if I would have dropped my history below that desaturated, let's just do that. So here's where I mess with the saturation, and then I did that vignette. So we'll say we went back to that point, which is somewhere in that area. And then I started saying, oh, I want to go to black and white. You'll see it drops it off. Then I went to color. But the original snapshot back up here of black and white is still remembered. So that's another way to get back in case you do mess with the history a little bit and you get rid of something you didn't want to get rid of.
I can comment on this. I have always done the same thing, but in virtual copy.
Yes.
But I think this is a better, more effective, and faster way than virtual copy. Because virtual copy, I can easily have 5 of the same image down below that isn't necessarily renamed. And with Snapshot, I can go to the different edits, and I've already assigned a name to them.
Yep.
So this is a big yes for Jay, because I have never used Snapshots before.
I think it's pretty neat. I use snapshots in both Lightroom and Photoshop. I like snapshots. So you just got to remember to do it. So it just needs to become a habit that you say, okay, I like this. I want to try something different. Before you move on, go hit the snapshot button. Okay? Uh-huh.
If you hit the reset button, will that remove everything that you applied when you put the lens correction stuff?
Yes. It goes back to 0. So yeah, if you do hit, his question was, if you had applied something on import and then you hit the reset button, would it take it off? Yes, it will. It'll take it all the way down to nothing. So it does get rid of that too.
I've hit that previous button before and wiped a bunch of stuff off. I mean, is that only going to take you back one step on that bottom right, the previous button?
Okay, we'll talk about the previous button now because you like that previous button. So if we were looking, let me find my files here. Honestly, I don't use that previous button that much.
I did a few times. It scared me afterwards. I ain't doing that again.
Previous is generally means.
It shouldn't wipe
previous
it out.
photo.
Yeah, unless that's what was on the previous. So, okay, let me get into my, okay. So let's scroll, let's see, is this one? Okay, so we're in here and we'll say, we're in the develop module now, and this picture doesn't have anything applied to it. Let's look at the next one. And this one does. So let's just make a move here. Okay. So now if I want to go over to that other picture that was similar to this, doesn't have to be the next one to the right. It can be, so if I selected this image, which has no, you look over here, there's nothing happened in the develop section of the basic. If I hit previous, it took and put all the same settings on the picture that I was just on and just editing. It doesn't have to be consecutive. It could be that the next one I messed with was, say, this one, which is 2 over. I'll just leave this open so you can kind of see. And if I hit previous now, it'll copy the picture or the adjustments from that Chicago picture onto this. Now that may not be good, but it will copy it onto there. And if you said, oh, it's not good, I can get rid of that with one swipe of Command or Control Z, and it'll go back to where it was before. But previous just means you're copying the information from the one that I call the primary, the brightest highlighted one, to the one that you select next. So whatever one is highlighted, then you pick the next one. That's what's going to get copied. So I'm thinking, Brian, in your situation, what may have happened was you may have picked one that didn't have any adjustments and you did them in the reverse order, and then it went back to the one that hadn't been edited yet. But it should be a faster way to proceed. It's sort of like the sync button, only it's on an individual basis and you can hop around. Like I could go, 50 pictures later, as long as this last one I picked, I did the edits on, and then the next one I clicked on was the one I did previous. I would get the exact same adjustments made to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that might probably come in handy if you did a burst shots and had a lot of the same picture, and
you could do it that way for sure.
And then if you like what you did on that one, then you can move it over to the
Yes.
next one.
Or if it's just two. If you had a lot of them, that's when you can sync it like we did last week. We talked about the sync menu or the sync button. But yes, previous works similar to sync, and then there's an auto sync, which if we have time, I'll talk about auto sync too, because we didn't talk about it last week. But so now we've covered the previous button, which was down towards the end of the day. But we've gone over it. Is there any questions about the previous button? Okay, so let's go back to looking at collections. So that's this last tab on the left side of the develop module, and we'll open it. And right now, this computer is a club's computer, so there's no collections made yet. But suppose we wanted just the Chicago pictures that I have in this folder. So I'm going to select down here in the slideshow or the film strip area, or I could go into my grid view and I'm going to select these 4 images and I want to put them in a collection. So I'm going to shift click. So I clicked on the first one on the left. I'm going to shift click on the far one. I have 3 of them selected now. And I'm going to go up here and you'll see a little plus sign on here. And when I click on it, you will see this menu open. And you will have some options here. One of them says create collection, create smart collection, we're not going to talk about, and create a collection set. So let's talk about the difference between a collection and a collection set. And I tend to, to me, it's a little bit, it's not hard, it's pretty simple, but it can get a little confusing and get straight in your mind. So let's, use an analogy, and we'll compare it to a file cabinet is my favorite way to describe this. And a collection set would be like an entire file cabinet. And in that file cabinet, there's drawers. And so we could make a second collection set, which would be one of the drawers within the file cabinet. So the file cabinet as a whole is a collection set, and so is the drawer. Now in this drawer, we have file folders. And in this case, we don't call them folders. This is where Adobe has got a little bit of a weird titling of things. And we have collections in develop module of Lightroom, but we also have folders and we also have albums. And okay, so we're going to talk about collections right now, not folders. But we want to create a collection which is sort of similar to that folder that you have in your file cabinet. And in that collection, we have individual pictures, which are kind of like the papers that you would put in a file folder, right? So what we need to use, if we wanted to use a collection or use some other, like Lightroom Mobile on your phone or your iPad, or excuse me, your tablet, or you wanted to do a web page from Lightroom, which you can do, and Adobe gives you free websites. And if you wanted to create from that, it's easy to use a collection. But they have to be in a collection. You cannot get to them if they're in just the folder section of the library. So you have to have them in the collections section. It can't be in a collection set, it has to be in a collection. So my suggestion of workflow, if you use this to organize your collections, is you would make a collection set, and inside that collection set, you'll have other collection sets, and then inside one of those sets, you'll have a collection. Okay, so let's make this so you can see what I'm talking about. So in this, I've got my Chicago pictures made, and I want to make a collection set, and I'm going to call it travel. So I will do that. And it says below there, location. Do I want it inside another collection set? In this case, no, because we don't have any yet, for one thing. And this is going to be my main header for another. So I'm going to say create. And you'll see it just popped into the left panel of the screen, and it says travel over here. So now I still don't want to put my pictures directly in there because that's a collection set, and I need to put them in a collection. So I'm going to make another folder, and I'm going to click on this plus sign, and I'm going to make another collection set. And in this one, I'm going to say it's Illinois. So I'm traveling to Illinois. Didn't have to go far. But so this one would be called Illinois. And this time I do want it inside a collection set. I want to put it in that travel folder. So I'm going to check mark this box. And it gives me the options that are available. Over in that left panel, I have two collection sets. One of them is a Smart Collections, and the other one is the one I just made called Travel. That's the one I want, so I'm going to pick that one. And I'm going to say create. So now it's going to put that Illinois right below. You can see how it indents it, and it's going to make a folder called Illinois. Now, if the only place in Illinois you were going was Chicago, then you could have dumped pictures in there. However, again, we want them in a collection set, in a collection, not a collection set. So I might be vacationing in several different places in Illinois. So one is Chicago, and that's where these pictures are from. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to, again, hit the plus button. This time I'm going to create a collection, and I get a different screen than we've had before. And so in here, I'm going to type Chicago. Now, I could name it Downtown Chicago. I could name it Chicago, July 2018, or whatever the case may be. Or, if you go to Chicago often and you take pictures, then you might want to date it. So it's Chicago, and it's May 2019. So whatever you want to title it, we'll just call it Chicago for now. I'm going to say, do I want this inside a collection set? Yes, I do. You don't have to do that, but I find that it's much easier to be organized if I do it this way. But I do have some that exist without being in a set. I'm going to go over here now, and if I do this down arrow, I'll see all the collection sets that I have over there. And so I could put it directly in Chicago, in travel. No, I don't want to do that. I want to put it under Illinois, so I'll pick Illinois. Now my next option is to include the selected photos. I already selected them. It works great to do it this way, so yes, I want to have that box checked. But if for some reason you happen to be making one of these collection sets or collections and you don't want to, you have the wrong picture selected, then you can uncheck that and you won't have to put it in there. You can also make a virtual copy at the same time, and it'll set it right next to the original in the folder section. What it does is it makes a virtual copy, puts the virtual copy into the collection, and it sets another virtual copy right next to it in the folder. Now, why would we want a virtual copy instead of the edit that we just made? We want the virtual copy of the edit. Well, if you're going to put it on your iPhone and or your tablet or whatever the case is, and you pass this phone to somebody, they could be doing an edit to your edit. And so I know that when I pass my phone around so that people can see my photos when they're on Lightroom mobile, inevitably somebody hits it so that they're back into an edit screen. You know, they've swiped twice, bumped it twice or whatever. So if I want to make sure that nobody messes with my virtual copy or my original edit, I can make a virtual copy, and then what they're looking at is a virtual copy, and if somebody messes with the editing buttons, whether intentionally or accidentally, they haven't changed my original edit. So you can make that decision for yourself, but that's what it does. And I am not hooked up to the internet right now, and so I'm not getting another option that is generally available down here. It also usually gives you a checkbox to say if you want to sync this collection to Lightroom. So I would normally, if I want it to show up on my phone or my iPad, I would then check that button and it will sync it. And over here to the left, which I know you can't see in this lighting, there's a little box if you're connected to the internet, and that will show a little, almost like a lightning bolt type thing. It's a little different than the other lightning bolt that we talked about earlier in class, but it will put a little lightning bolt shaped thing over there, and that means it's syncing to the cloud. So it's taking the images up to the cloud so you can get at them on one of your mobile devices or just play in Lightroom, which is a different plugin or a different software than we're using here. But they do play together, so you can do that. So at this point in time, I'll go ahead and click Create. And so now you'll notice that there's 4 pictures next to Chicago, and actually if I click on that and go into grid view, you will see all 4 pictures there. I can also go up to the folder that I was just in, and you'll see they're still there, they're still highlighted. So they are in both places, essentially. These are just sort of thumbnails of them in each place. Now I could make another collection, and let's go ahead and do that. We'll say I wanted one of just the buildings downtown. So I'm going to unselect the ones that are not, and I'm going to command click, and I'll have these. And so we could come in here and make another. Actually, I'll do it a little bit different. I'm going to show you this, but I'll show you. Say we clicked on one, and I want to make another collection that's just, oops, I got in the wrong. In the collections, I want to make another collection, and I'm going to say it's Chicago buildings. And I want to go ahead and put it inside the same collection set, so I'm fine with that. And I'll go ahead and click Create. And you'll see another one popped in, but it didn't bring over that photo. So let's go up to, oops, this, well, there. So for some reason, Lightroom froze on us. I clicked too many times too fast. It just didn't like it.
There's an
Yep.
advantage to doing these collections that, you know, I'll load up some and it's all on this date. But then I loaded up some, go back 6 months from now, before and load up some other pictures, work on them or something. But if I decide I want to take and have them in collections, I can take all those different times that I've loaded up pictures and put them all in the same collection.
You can. Mm-hmm.
That way, if it's all of the family or whatever.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm going to show you here. So you can see it closed them all up. To open them up to see that chain that I've just made, I just click on the arrow and it'll open it up. Now, for whatever reason, it didn't, it didn't like this whole last one I did. So we'll just start from that point on. So I made another collection that was Chicago buildings. And I do want it inside there, and I do want the picture that I selected. So yes, now create. Okay, so you can see I've got the one, but I kind of wanted the other one in there too. So I can simply go over to this one, highlight it. I can click it and drag it into the one I want. Now it doesn't take it out of this one. You'll notice it still stayed there. So you can have one image in more than one collection. So that's what I wanted to show you here. And that's how you can get them from one point to the other, is you can move them that way. You could also be up in here, and I'll just click into this. Now this is not in Chicago, and we all know that. But I could say I wanted this and that. I could click here. I could drag it over and drop it into Chicago. And now you'll see that that's in there. So I can just click and drag from my folder section and drop it into an existing set or collection, or I can make a new one. Now, if you've got to make a new one, you could make it empty and then drag them in there too. So that's possible. If you want to get that out of there, so that one should not be in there, I'll click on it to highlight it. Then I'll right click, and it will give me the option down here, remove from collection. So I'll just click that and it goes away. It's still up in my folder section. It just took it out of that collection. Okay? Does that make sense? Everybody get that? All right. No more questions on that? Sure. Great.
And if you don't do a backup of your catalog, that's the only place collections are registered at, is in the backup of your catalog.
Oh, okay.
If you were to lose your catalog and you hadn't been backing it up, all your collections are gone.
Okay. So like if we quit now, like if I quit Photoshop and I didn't back up and something would happen to this, then these will disappear. If something happened to it. If you just closed it down and everything was right as rain, when you opened it back up, it'll still be there. But if something happens to it, these need to be backed up too. Okay,
See,
right?
excuse
That's
me,
what you
Stan,
said.
Are you saying that if you lost your backup, you would lose your collections?
I'm saying if you don't back up your catalog, you would lose the collections. Collections are only highlighted in the catalog. They're basically just pointed to.
Yeah.
They're not actually saved anywhere, except for in the catalog.
So, okay, so we're going to talk about the library module now for a minute. So I'm in the library module. And these are all titled Chicago and whatever. So if I wanted to rename any of these, I can do that. So if for some reason you wanted to name it, you did, say you ran it through AI Clear, and that's the only way you could tell that it was theirs to title it. You could go ahead and come up here and you can right click and actually I want to not right click, I want to come up to, sorry, I gotta get, we'd click on the image, come up to library, and you can hit rename image, and it will open up another window, if I can land on it. And it gives you the ability to rename it. And you have the ability to rename it as you wish. So this one happens to say file name, but and it shows you what it looks like. But if you wanted to custom name it, that's where I would go. So I want a custom name, and then I would type in whatever I want it to be titled. You can keep some of the information that's there, and you can add on to it. You can type in whatever you want, but you have some options. So you can decide what you want it to say and how you want it to say it, or you can make your own type file template, so file name template. So you could figure it out by coming over here and messing with this thing. Like you'd say, you know, we talked about this last week, there's options under each one of these that you could select and insert, then you would hit insert and it would put it up in this box. So those are options that you can do, and you can rename any one of the pictures any way you want to. So that's kind of a neat option. If it's on an external hard drive, not on your internal hard drive, and you want to rename it, if you do not have that hard drive connected, you can't rename it until you connect your hard drive. So what will happen is, if this were on an external hard drive and I went up to library and I came down to the middle here where it says rename photo, it would be grayed out, so I couldn't get to it. So you have to make sure you're connected in order to rename it. Even if you built a smart preview, I think you still have to be connected to rename it with a smart preview even. So that's renaming. Now, back to, we were talking, I know some of you use Photoshop, some of you don't. But if we wanted to move a picture into Photoshop, and you got Photoshop free, I mean, it's not free, you're paying for it with your photography plan on CC. So if you're doing that, you have the ability to learn Photoshop. And how do you get your image that's been edited from Lightroom into Photoshop? It's really easy. The easiest way is I use a keyboard shortcut, which is Command or Control E, and it'll take it right in. The other way, there's always more ways than one to do it. So if I right click, it opens up this panel. If I come down to Edit In, you'll see one of my options is Photoshop CC 2019 right at the top. So if I click on that, it will take it into Photoshop. So that's another way. You can also go up to Photo, and here's another Edit In, and you'll get the same exact menu options as you had before. So you can click on that and take it into Photoshop. Somehow I've unclicked my pictures, so they're all grayed out. But if you had more than one selected, so we'll say we have two selected, and you right click and you get that panel, Edit In, and it opens up the fly. Now you'll notice that you have a few more options that are available. Maybe you want to merge them into a panorama inside Photoshop instead of Lightroom, which, unless Lightroom's not working for you, I would do it in Lightroom. It does a better job. And it's still raw, so you can do raw editing to it if you shot a raw panorama. The same is for HDR, so you can merge your HDR in Photoshop if you choose to. Again, if you take it into Photoshop and you do your HDR merge over there, when you bring it back in, it's no longer raw. So if you've shot raw and you want to edit a raw image, you would want to do it here in Lightroom as opposed to Photoshop, unless it will not do a good job for you here. If you get into Photoshop, you may want to open it as a smart object. You can do that by coming in here, clicking on that. If you don't know what smart objects are, that's something that as you got into Photoshop you can learn. And sometimes you'll maybe want 2 or more images in one document in Photoshop, and that's where you'll go down and open as layers in Photoshop. So you might have 4 images and they'll each be on individual layers, but they're in one document so you can work on them all together using masking and things like that. So that's where you get into Photoshop. Now, once we are in, we'll go ahead and open.
Yeah, she's up real quick.
Yeah, well, it's open in Photoshop.
Are you saying that in Lightroom it's in RAW, but when you move it over to Photoshop, it doesn't go over there in RAW?
It goes over there in RAW, but when it comes back as a PSD or a TIFF.
Okay.
And so you don't have the same options anymore. So you don't have your raw options available to you. So now I clicked to open this in Photoshop, and this menu comes up, and you see 3 different options. So if I edited these in Lightroom and I have adjustments made to them, if I want those adjustments to stay with my picture, which more than likely I do, as I move them into Photoshop, I will want to have this top one, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments applied. So that's what I would click, and then I would hit edit, and it will take it into Photoshop. But before we do that, let's talk about the other 2 options. One of them is edit a copy, and so if you read the small print below that, it says it will take in the original file, a copy of the original file, but it will not have any of the Lightroom adjustments attached to it, so you won't be able to see them. So I don't know if I've ever used that, maybe once or twice, but that would be pretty rare for me to ever want to make an unedited copy and take it over there and then bring it back. But there may be some reasons you would, so maybe you'll find a reason to use that one. The next one I've used, edit original. But it's not, this is where it got confusing for me at first, so I want to make sure I explain this to you. If I take it right now as it is, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, and I take this one into into Photoshop, it will make a copy of the edit that I have made in Lightroom, and it will put it in Photoshop. I can do edits to that image in Photoshop. I save it by doing a Command S, and it will bring it back into Lightroom as a copy. So what it will do, and I'll show you this, is say I edited this one and I took it into Photoshop, I did some stuff to it, I saved it, it'll be sitting right next to it. So it'll add a version of it here, and it'll be a PSD if that's the way this computer's set up. And if I wanted to work with that one, the PSD that came in here, that would also be considered an original. So this is an original, but that PSD, when it comes back in, is also considered an original now. So that's where it can get confusing. But let's open this up real quickly. And it's going to take just a minute to load up Photoshop because I didn't have it open. Anybody have a question while it's loading in? Smart previews are, yeah.
Yeah, I think is that a little understanding about that snapshot. Is that gonna, when you do it a certain way, it takes a little longer to bring the picture in, or if there's certain sizes or what?
The smart preview, essentially, when it builds a smart preview, what it tends to do is it makes it so that you don't have to have your external hard drive connected to your computer, and you can still edit within Lightroom itself. You can't edit within Photoshop, but you can edit within Lightroom without having an external hard drive connected. Now, if your image is stored on your internal hard drive of your computer, then you don't need a smart preview because you've always got that image with you. So that's what a smart preview is. But that was, what was your question?
That's kind of what I was wondering about that.
So I had 2 images selected when I was in Lightroom, so they brought them both in. So you can see, here's one, and this has a little issue, so we'll just pick on this for right now. And I want to select this as quickly as I can. And I need to make it a little bit bigger. What it did, I took the magic wand, I clicked in this area. We're not learning Photoshop, so I don't want to get too into it. I need to increase my selection so I can fix that. So I need to expand 10. Okay. And it also found a gap, I guess, at the bottom. So I want to fill that, so I'm going to go up to Edit, Fill, Content Aware, okay. And it's going to do its thing. And now I'm going to add a layer just so we can see it. And then I'm also going to make a copy of this. I just want you to be able to see what happens when I, okay, so we'll just say, there we go. Okay, so I want you to see, so there's 2 blank layers and 2 copies of the picture. So I'm going to just say Command S, and it's going to save it back to Lightroom. It's already done. I'm going to go over to Lightroom now.
Go back.
Yeah, just go over to the Lightroom, please. And so you'll see when it saved it back, it saved it right here. So this computer is set up to save as a TIFF. You can see that suffix is a .tif. And you can also see that it called it an edit. So it's number 2, I can't read that, 289, I think, and edit TIFF. So here's the original, and here's the edit. So if I wanted to take this one into Photoshop and edit from the point that it is right now, if I then did a command, I can come over here, edit in Photoshop, edit 219, and it gives me the option. This is where, if I wanted to continue my Photoshop edit, this is where I would hit Edit Original, and then I would go ahead and say Edit, and it would open it up, and it would look just exactly like the screen did before. It's kind of a hassle to have Stan go in, close it down, come back. So we won't do that. Trust me, it is. And it will open up those 4 layers just the way we saw them, so I could continue to work with those 4 layers, whatever they may be. Did that throw you guys, or did you kind of understand that? What I want to show you too is, because I want this image to always sit next to its original, I want to see that yours will do that also. So if you'll follow along with me on your computer, that will be great. If you are on a PC, we are going to go up to the Edit menu, click on it, go all the way down to the bottom to Preferences, click on it. If you're on a Mac, then you're going to go up to the word Lightroom, it says Lightroom Classic up there. You're going to click on it, and it will open up Options. You're going to pick Preference, and it will open the same thing. You're going to go over to the tab that says External Editing, click on it. And if you come down about 2/3 of the way, you'll see it says Stack with Original. That needs to be checked. If it's not, I would go ahead and check it. Because if it's not checked and you go into Photoshop, come back to Lightroom, it will put it at the end of the folder. So if you've got 300 pictures on it, it won't sit it next to it. It'll sit it all the way to the bottom. So, see it right here?
Oh, way down there, okay.
So that should be checked. Once you have it checked, you can click OK, X out of it, whatever you want to do. And now your Photoshop edits will sit right next to your Lightroom image.
You brought it back from Photoshop into Lightroom as a TIFF. Mine's set up as a TIFF too, but
If you would rather it be PSD, then change it to PSD while you're in there. So I'll open that back up.
Do you have any thoughts on a TIFF versus a PSD?
I believe TIFFs take up a little bit more file space, if that's an issue for you. I generally use PSD. Some people use TIFF. I don't really have a reason. I just do it. So, but you can, what do you use?
I use PSD unless it's my final, what I figure is my final version, then I use TIFF.
Because it has more information? Or
No,
what's
it's
the reason?
actually a little bit smaller, I think, than PSD.
Oh, it is smaller.
Yeah,
So
'cause
I was
I'm
thinking it was
using
bigger,
brush.
smaller. Okay.
You actually get to that point with a final edit?
It's final?
Yep, because I so seldom do it.
So I will leave this set here at TIFF because that's where it was. But I use mine as PSDs, but I don't really have a rationale for doing that. All right, so let's keep going. I want to show you some kind of just easy, fun stuff here. If you want to, sometimes you'll want to see a picture without all the hubbub that's around it. So if you hit the L key, it'll dim the lights. And if you hit it one more time, it'll be lights out. So it's completely black in the background. And if you hit it one more time, then you can see everything again. And you can do this in the develop module also. So if you have your picture here and you want to see how it looks without all the panels, and with a dark frame around it, you just hit the L key once, it dims the lights, you hit it one more time, it goes black in the background, hit it one more time, and you can come back and see the full thing. So that's just a fun little easy thing. All right, so let's talk about the bottom bars. We haven't talked about that yet. And let's go into grid mode. And why don't you guys go ahead and pull that up on your screen. So hit the G key, get back to the grid mode. Now let's look, first off, I'm talking about this bar down here. The toolbar, bottom toolbar. And at the far right, there's this little arrow that's pointing down. If you click on it, it'll open this window. And you can see these are all options that you can have in this bottom toolbar. You know, there can be more than what is showing. So you can decide what you want. So it's a matter of personal preference. If you like a lot of stuff in there, if you want to see everything, you check mark everything. If you like a cleaner look, then you might just have it this way. And I believe this is the default because this is what mine looks like, and I don't think I've ever messed with it. So this is default. So but you can add any of these other things that you want. Flagging would be those pick or reject flags, where you can click down here and you can add your pick or reject. I tend to use the keyboard shortcut, so I don't need it down there, which the keyboard shortcut again is X for reject, P for pick, U for unflag. You can do ratings down there, that's the stars. So if you want to be able to add a star rating, you can also add star ratings on, you know, if you have it selected up in here in your cell area, which that depends on how you set it up. You can do the color ratings down there and so on. We'll just talk about what we have over here now. This is the grid pattern and this is loop. So if we click on here, it goes to the single image. If you want to get back to grid, you can also just click on this and it'll go to the grid view. Now this next one is a compare view. So let's say that we have these 5 images and we want to compare and we want the best of the 5. So I have the first one selected. And now I want to select all of these, so I'm going to shift click. Now they're all selected. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to nab this X compare view, this XY. And it's going to pop up this. And you'll notice in the upper corner it says select and candidate. So you can look at these two and you can say, well, which one do I like better? Or whatever your, what you want to decide among these. But maybe you say, well, between the two, I think I like the one that's on the candidate side. So down here at the bottom, there's an X. You can X out of it. And so what it did is it moved the candidate over to the select section and gave you the next picture in line in the candidate section. And now you can look at these two. Which do I like better? Well, the one on the right has the corner fixed. So we'll X out of this one again. And so now we're back, and it's kind of confusing because this is the one that we fixed, but it's before we fixed it. So you can say, well, I don't want that one because this is the one that's fixed. So we'll, X out of that. And now which one do I like between the two? And you can decide, and that's how you decide. So you would say, well, I'm going to keep the buildings. I think that's the representation of Chicago I want. And so now it's just stuck on this last one. So if we go back into grid view, you can see this is the one that's highlighted that we ended up keeping. But what if you wanted to look at 3 of them? We'll say these 3. So I'm going to shift click, select those 3 at on the same screen instead of just 2. You can have all 3 of them up at the same time, and you still have the ability to click out of the ones you don't want. And if you say remove this one, then you'll be up to 2. And if you remove that one, then you'll be up to the 1.
If you click the X and remove it, are you also removing it off the bottom?
No, you're just unselecting it. Yeah, that's all you're doing is unselecting it. So you can see down here, it's still highlighted, the one we kept, but the other ones are still down there. So that's what that does. This is a face for people thing. I'm sorry, I've not used that. That's not something I've used, so I'm gonna have to say we're not talking about that today. We're gonna go back into grid view for right now. And the next thing looks like a little spray paint can. Yeah.
When you're going through those and trying to figure out the best one that you want to save,
Mm-hmm.
can you delete the others and just leave the one, the best one?
You could flag it for deletion, so you could do hit the X key and say I'm going to delete that when I'm ready to delete it. You want to make sure, but you wouldn't necessarily do it in that mode. But let's get back to that mode for a second.
Did you do a right click on that? There's a
Oop.
option there to remove it.
There's also, see there's flags down here at the corners. So I could flag, say, this one for deletion if I wanted to. And then you know, you will want to make sure that you are really sure you want to delete it, or how do you want to delete it, which we'll talk about here in a second. I'll go ahead and mention it now. You can delete it from your drive, or you can simply delete it from the Lightroom catalog. And it will ask you those things. So you need to know, do you want to get rid of it 100%? You don't have it ever again. It's going to take it off your hard drive. You can select that. You just need to make sure that you're not just wanting to get it out of your catalog for some reason. But for me, if it's in my catalog, I still have it. Or if I've never just deleted it intentionally from the catalog and kept it. If it's not good enough to be in the catalog, it's probably not good enough to keep. So that would be, though, a decision that you'll make for yourself. But so let's talk about this little spray paint can. Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's take a break, and we'll go like 10 minutes would be good.